together by her predecessor. Alison has provided commentary that says that she is satisfied and assured with the partnership working that she presides over in Angus. She is very connected to some of the other work streams that councillors will be aware of, with delivering on the promise in the wider integrated children's services partnership, which I'm hoping that you're able to pick out through the report that she's presented. Alison's stewardship throughout the COVID-19 pandemic in holding much more frequent multi-agency meetings to discuss the response to COVID-19 and to ensure proactive supports were put in place wherever possible for children and families across Angus has been instrumental in supporting agencies to deliver on good outcomes for children and families. At that point, I'm happy to take any questions on Alison's behalf. Thank you.
Councillor Speed, have you got a question?
Yeah, apologies.
Not a question. Have you got a question?
No, I do have a question.
Okay, ask your question. Comment.
Yeah, apologies, because I did think this was the report that we were on previously, and it's perhaps just because we have adjourned a couple of times already, and I thought this was the next one up. So yeah, I was obviously, I'll just be very brief, I was obviously explaining the challenges that many kind of parent carers, families and children report to me experiencing around kind of the difficulties navigating systems and getting the right support and help. But I will move on to my question, which is in relation to the prepare approach that was piloted with 15 families to help engage children, parent carers in preparation for child case conferences. I note that concluded in March 2020, and there clearly has been good outcomes. You know, there's a very powerful statement there from one parent. And I just wondered, you know, what progress has been made. It does say that this has been hindered because of the pandemic from progressing any further. The report does identify that, you know, there is a growing need for early help and support for families, and you know, this one would, for me, is a piece of work. Is there an update on that? And also just a little bit more detail around the transitions work that's been progressed. It does seem to be the same kind of report and information that's been circulated for the last year or two now, and I just wondered if we could have any more detail on that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Speed. Catherine?
Thank you, Councillor Speed, for those questions. And so firstly, I would point out that this report is covering the period April 2019 to July 2020. And because of the special reporting arrangements to committee, it hadn't been presented to full council as quickly as we would have liked to. So there has been significant movement and obviously further challenge throughout the last year in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting inability to pull people together in one physical space as easily as we would have liked. So the reference in relation to prepare and the delay in progressing further related to a point in time in the summer last year. Obviously those challenges continued for a period of months, but I'm pleased to say that we have in the last couple of months managed to re-establish prepare, and we are starting to introduce that as part of our ordinary process in Angus. And you're right, the outcomes were extremely positive, but the challenge was scaling it up when we weren't allowed to get people physically together in one place. So I hope that gives you some assurance that we haven't forgot about it and that we're absolutely committed to that wider and deeper engagement with children, families and young people as part of the child protection process. In relation to the other piece of work about transitions, I don't think that we have George Bowie on the call today. He was obviously available at one of the previous dates where this meeting called, and George would have been able to talk committee through. Oh, I do see George waving. Excellent, super. Can I pass over to George, because George will be able to give you much more detail on the work that he's been chairing and leading on behalf of the Child Protection Committee. Thank you. Sorry, George.
Thank you.
That's okay. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I chair the transitions group that reports into the partnership into children and families and also to the Adult Protection Committee. And that group has really looked at 4 things. So the first of those was people, youngsters who were in the child protection system and then by virtue of age outgrew that, and times, and those numbers were very low, would come into the adult protection system. The criteria are quite different, and obviously as people become older and more self-reliant, they're on the register. So that, I think, was fairly small business for us, and we were satisfied after we'd looked at that pretty rigorously that the system was okay, working between the 2 things, bearing in mind they're quite different. The second group we looked at was young people who have learning disabilities, and the existing transition is pretty thorough. We thought that really had stood up well to analysis, with one bit that needed more work, and Councillor Speed will be aware of this, we've spoken about it, which was the kind of the emotional impact on families of the different approach once people transition into adulthood. We resolved to do a bit of work on that, and that has all been pretty well stalled by the pandemic, I'm afraid, but we'll be looking to pick that up again. The third group was really around young people with autism, and I would say there are 2 categories, if you like, of folk who have these issues. There are people with autism and learning disability, which again we think the services there are pretty robust, and we have young people who have autism only, and we don't think the services there are really as resilient as we would like them to be. And we're doing some work to identify how we should shape services in the future to support people who have autism only. And I think the third sector would be very important in that work. I should have said the transitions group's a multi-agency group. And finally, and probably most significantly, we've been majoring in our work on vulnerable young people, many of whom are care leavers with issues to do with mental health, childhood trauma, substance misuse, kind of vulnerability in the community, and sometimes offending as well. So that's probably the area we focused the most on, and you know, in the partnership we've been working very closely with colleagues and children and families to improve services in that group. So that's a quick resume of what we're doing. I would be quite happy at some point in the future to take a report about transitions if people would be interested in that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, George. Councillor Speed, are you happy with the both very full answers?
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks, Catherine. Thanks, George. And yeah, I would certainly welcome a report on transitions, because I think it has been obviously a key theme that's come through reporting, but not kind of standalone. So it would be good to get the kind of the finer detail of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Speed. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. I'd like to thank the Chief Executive and Catherine Lindsay for the report. Truly, just to make the comment that the report was presented to the August Scrutiny and Audit Committee and received quite a lot of scrutiny at that meeting. So those members, such as myself, who attended that meeting have already asked quite a lot of questions and scrutinised. So it's probably more from the benefit of the public that you know, we asked questions then, so we're not going to repeat them today.
Thank you very much, Councillor Duff. Councillor Devine.
Yes, thank you, Provost, and Catherine and Margot. There's a lot of good, creative and innovative work in this, you know, particularly given the increased demand. It's just so heartening to see all of this going on. And Prepare is one of these innovative things, and I'm glad to hear that it's starting up again, because it certainly had good outcomes before. It's just on page 265, it's talking about chronologies, and there certainly seem to be weaknesses here. I don't think I brought this up at Scrutiny and Audit, I hope I didn't. You know, we were talking about this chronologies, weaknesses in chronologies about 3-4 years ago, I think, when there was a great big inspection. So it's a bit disconcerting that we're still in this situation. And I just wondered why you think that might be. Is it because there's a turnover of staff and new staff are not being inducted properly into this? And what do you think could be done to solve this problem?
Thanks very much, Councillor Devine. Catherine.
Thank you. Yes. So in, I think, every inspection and every audit I've ever looked at, both here and elsewhere, whether in relation to children's services, justice or adult services, chronologies is a persistently wicked issue. And there are a lot of different reasons why chronologies aren't as we would like them to be. I suppose the first thing to say is that the information is there, it is held in case files. It's in the case notes section, so it's not that the information is not gathered and does not inform assessments. The issue is whether or not it sits in a standalone document, which we refer to as a chronology, the purpose of which is to give a really kind of overarching flavour of the key significant events. And the reality is that along with a range of other kind of administrative and report writing tasks, sometimes staff prioritise one thing over the other. What we're trying to drive towards is consistency in the completion of chronologies, and a consistency in the standard and the quality of those. And you're right, the turnover of staff and our fairly limited capacity in terms of quality assurance and oversight of those aspects, as opposed to the case decision-making aspects, has been a challenge. And so I think that's why we still find those particular areas of practice have room for improvement. And it's a significant area, that I'm sure George Bowie will also agree, does give us cause for concern. But I think what I would be more concerned about is if we were finding that the assessment of the needs of children didn't accord with the information that's in the wider file. And that is not what we're finding. So it's something that we will continue to work with, improve. And certainly in the Children, Families and Justice Service, which this comment mostly relates to, we are currently looking at how we can improve our kind of overall quality assurance processes and embed that feedback for practitioners so that they can learn what it is that we're looking for and perhaps become more consistent in delivering that over time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Answered your question, Councillor Devine?
Yep. Indeed, thank you.
But we're still on questions, Councillor Bell.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you, Margot and Catherine. I think, Catherine, I did touch on this with Alison Todd at Scrutiny and Audit, but I wanted to go into it a little bit deeper just now, particularly in light of another murder of a woman this week, Sabina Nessa, that's attracted a lot of media attention. And I guess a kickback from women and campaigners around how we tackle gender-based abuse, and I guess the Safe and Together approach that's mentioned in the report, page 235, that we've discussed quite a lot in the past, is a way of working with perpetrators. But are you seeing at a national level with your peers that any debate around how we turn that conversation around to move it away, I guess, from what women and girls need to do to change their behaviours to stay safe in the public domain, to what we do to educate boys and young men into adulthood to change behaviours and to educate them to not be a threat to women. I think this is something that is an enormously wicked problem in society. The police have talked about this a lot in our scrutiny and audit meetings as well. But I guess I'm just not seeing the level of work that's required embedded in what we do yet. But are those conversations happening in your network to give me any confidence that we'll start to see a shift in that narrative sometime soon? Thanks.
Catherine?
Thank you very much, Councillor Bellin, for highlighting what is a hugely important issue and topic, and as councillors will be aware, is a subject of its own in Angus also in terms of our Violence Against Women partnership and our approach to keeping women and girls safe. This report quite rightly does refer to Safe and Together and some of the practices that we've adopted locally across our multi-agency approach, because this obviously tips into child protection, and it's that angle that this report specifically covers. The Safe and Together model is, yes, about helping women and girls to keep safe, but also holding perpetrators to account. And so part of the emphasis shift in the Safe and Together model, for example, is to challenge the default position, which has been the case previously, where when there's an incident, we hold women accountable for the safety of their children, as opposed to rightly attributing part of the responsibility for that with the male party and usually the perpetrator of the abuse, and actually looking to have those conversations much more openly and transparently, rather than looking for women to take action to keep children safe in and of themselves. And I think that's one of the most significant shifts in terms of the model's emphasis. And I think that is a helpful and healthy approach. We also do work with perpetrators, and I think the report does refer to the work that the Justice Service offers in terms of perpetrators who have yet to be held to account through court processes, and for those who are willing, and we can only work with those who are willing to look at behaviour change. We have opened up a possibility for them to do constructive work to try and change their behaviour, whether within their existing relationship where there has been an abusive incident, or indeed for the future and for the onward safety and protection of women and children. In terms of that national conversation, I'm very well aware that COSLA have a significant piece of work ongoing in relation to violence against women and girls more generally. And obviously this is not specifically a social work practice issue, although very clearly we have quite a foot in the door there in terms of being able to get into families and make services available to support people to be safe and to be well. So there are discussions ongoing, but it's a much wider partnership arena than just the social work professional leadership group that I would be exposed to on a routine basis. Thank you
very much, Catherine. Another question, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, and thank you for the report. I note on page 220 in paragraph 4.3 that there's an increase in the average length of time that children's names are on the Child Protection Register for over 1 year has increased year on year since 2015-2016. Can you just advise us what work is being done other than closely monitoring it to try and address the issue? And on a slightly facetious point, was it a deliberate pun that the pre-birth resource allocation meeting for pregnant women has the acronym of PRAM?
So I'm happy to hand over to George Bowie to answer your final question there, because George Bowie was around when that acronym was created, so he can perhaps offer some insight into that, and then I'll come back on your other point. Thank you.
Yes, I was the Children's Services Manager at the time when the pre-birth group started, and we did deliberately choose that acronym so it would stick in people's minds, and I think that actually worked. So yes, slightly tongue-in-cheek, but it was intended to make people remember quite clearly what it was all about.
Okay, thanks for that, George. Catherine?
Thank you. So in relation to the average length of time that children's names are on the Child Protection Register, we are keeping a watchful eye on that, and we always keep a watchful eye on the trends on the Child Protection Register, but we can't disconnect that particular statistic from the kind of wider pattern of service demand that we experience in the wider pathways that children's care and support follows. So sometimes it's more in a child and a family's interest to retain names on the register for a period that's a bit longer than we might for other families. The alternatives might be that we refer that family into more formal systems of support, which would be through the children's hearing system. So children's names coming off the register doesn't necessarily always mean that they're no longer in need of the provision of services. It's just where that responsibility is held, monitored and reviewed can shift depending which pathway you choose to follow. Sometimes children's names can stay on the register for a fairly short period of time because actually the risk has escalated to the degree that we've taken a child protection order and they become looked after and accommodated and therefore are no longer requiring to be on the child protection register. So there's lots of different reasons why those figures might look like that. So when I say that we monitor it closely, we monitor case by case explanation. We would be very concerned about that, because it's a punitive system, you know, that as people experience it, and we don't want to have families who are subject to child protection procedures and case review where that is not necessary and where it's not the best mechanism to support that family to keep their children safe. But we're satisfied, and we remain satisfied operationally, that those children who are on the register are the children who need to be on the register. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Bray, question?
Yes, thanks, Provost. And I suppose this is technically a question. I wondered if perhaps Catherine could convey to Alison Todd my thanks and appreciation for all she's done. And of course, she wasn't able to be here for me to say that to her in person, but I'd be grateful if you could pass that on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bray.
I'm happy to do that.
Comments? Councillor Sturrock, as convener Children Lifelong Learning, do you want to add a comment at all?
Yeah, I'll make a comment. I would like to thank Margot and Alison as chair of the ACPC for the report, and also the contributions from Catherine and George for the questions that they've had to answer. And I'd also like to add that, as Councillor Duff has already said, this report has already been before the Scrutiny and Audit Committee of 1 month ago, and we approved the minutes of that meeting last Friday, or on the 9th, when we item 3 on this actual agenda. And I would just like to add that Councillor Duff made a valid comment there, that we are now at the moment not asking so many questions, and so many more questions were asked at the Scrutiny and Audit Committee itself. So if viewers want to sort of catch up and will actually get the whole sort of panoply of the questions, they can go into the Angus TV website to catch up on that particular meeting if they're so interested. And I would just like to sort of close on the thing that the protection of our children is all our business. And you will see one of the key priorities is to keep reminding people what they can do if they have a concern. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sturrock. Councillor Fairweather.
Thank you, Provost. I'd also like to thank Catherine and George, but if they could also convey my thanks to Alison Todd. The offer of a briefing from Alison at a later date would certainly be welcome for this. So perhaps we could we could do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Speed, this is a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. Yeah, I'm very interested in this agenda item, and unfortunately I am not on Scrutiny and Audit. So this would be my chance to kind of ask questions and represent my constituency. So I just want to say and go back on the comments that I was previously making, albeit on the wrong agenda item to start with, about my ongoing concerns about the pressures on children and families throughout this time. As I've said, many come to me, you know, not knowing where to turn, have lengthy wait times to get the right support and services, and the lack of kind of face-to-face continues to, you know, support continues to impact. And I think what really concerns me is that while you and I and many of us are able to, you know, go out for a meal, have a drink, sit round a table, go to an event, go to a festival, do all of those things together now in large groups, and yet some of our most vulnerable are really struggling to get that kind of personal human contact and support. And so I just think we shouldn't forget that. And, you know, I appreciate this report, the huge amount of work that's going on, but, you know, some of the stats and you know, and information in there is really, you know, it's gripping stuff. And I think that even although there's perhaps been a previous meeting when it comes round again for full council committee, that we certainly shouldn't skim over it, and that we should give it the thorough time and debate that's needed. So thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much. Bang on your 3 minutes, Councillor Speed. Well done.
Oh, I did say to you that I would make the most of it, so thank you.
Well done. Are there any other comments? Councillor Fairweather, is that an old hand, or are you an old hand? Right. Any other comments? Okay, colleagues, are there recommendations set out in paragraph 1 agreed?
Agreed.
Move on now to item 12, Angus Development Plan Scheme 2021. Councillor Salmon and Councillor Macmillan Douglas are to lead on this, and Joe Patterson is here to answer any questions. Councillor Salmon.
Yes, thank you, Provost. I was just going to move the report as is and just make a few personal observations. So I see the local development plan as vital to how the infrastructure of Angus is shaped for decades to come, and these decisions will play a vital role in the economic and social growth of Angus and its citizens. The council must be ambitious, imaginative and proactive in looking at ways of zoning our towns and villages to meet the future needs of our citizens and businesses. There must be open minds and logical reasoning in house sites for new housing, private and social, and business parks, etc., are located and developed. Our town centres and their future use must be considered. Active travel and public transport must be at the forefront of our thinking as we develop low carbon and sustainable solutions for areas of development. We must robustly engage with our communities and work with them as this council reimagines and creates Angus's new local development plan. The County of Angus has a bright future, but we must design the new foundations to allow the building blocks of the future to create a sustainable, vibrant Angus by working in partnership with our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Macmillan Douglas.
Thank you, Provost. This is a comment, not a question. You're happy for me to go ahead?
Yeah, you were supporting Councillor.
Okay, yeah. Sure, yeah. I fully support what Councillor Salmon has said, and I would like to add to it that there are really remote working world in which we are increasingly living, although we don't know exactly how that's going to pan out over time. But there are opportunities for places like Angus to encourage people to come and live and work here, although their so-called place of work might be hundreds or thousands of miles away. And I think when we are in a very, very beautiful area like Angus, with all the wonderful historic and golf and sporting resorts that we have, there is a tremendous strategic opportunity for our county. And the development plan, of course, sits right in the centre of that. Because if we can encourage people to develop our villages, to make our towns even nicer and more attractive, we will find more people will come here, and that will raise the whole, or it can raise the whole prosperity of the county and of the region. So I'm fully supportive of this this programme. I'd also just like to add a congratulations that through the pandemic, not many councils in Scotland kept reviewing planning applications and encouraging business to go on. Angus did, and the chair of the Standards Committee, Councillor Lumgare, and all the officers who support him must take great credit for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Provost. I have a couple of questions. In paragraph 7.3, we're told that the Act places an additional 35 duties on planning authorities. That's on top of everything else we already do. And it will place additional pressure on existing resources. And while I congratulate Jill Patterson and her team for managing it within existing staffing across the council, I just wonder if the funding was available from where the impact is coming from, how many extra staff would be needed, and in the environmental impact report assessment, it states that this doesn't impact on people, and I'm just wondering about the logic of that when it's impacting on the whole of Angus in the way we're going to move forward.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Moore. Joe Patterson. Joe, can you answer these questions?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Moore. So in relation to your first point around the additional resource burden on planning authorities, that's something that has been flagged up at a national level across all local authorities, particularly in an era of pressing budgets and also a reduction in the overall planning workforce that's happened over the last number of years. That's also been coupled with difficulties in attracting younger people into the profession and new recruits within the organisations. So I suspect there will be a period whereby the authorities will be stretched. What I would say is that I think one of the comments, particularly that Councillor Salmond and Councillor McMillan-Douglas mentioned, was that the local development plan is central to council activity. And as a planning authority, we need to take account of that it's all departments and services across the council contributing to that preparation of that plan. It's not the planning service plan, it's the Community of Angus's plan, and it's the council's plan as to how it wants to take things forward. So a number of these duties actually will fall on resource implications for other departments, but collectively working together should set out a long-term plan and set us up so that when funding streams become available for projects, we have those clearly set out in the development plan itself. So it'll be a difficult period, but I'm confident that working together and working in a small authority, we've got good working relationships across departments that we can deliver that as quickly and as well as we can. In relation to your second point around the Equalities Impact Assessment, the report in front of you today is really just the programme for taking forward the plan itself. The plan will absolutely have an impact on all different range of people, and that Equalities Assessment will be a key part of that process at day one of the preparation. So as we take forward the engagement plan and the participation statement, which will come back in front of you as members and will involve you as members in shaping that, the Equalities Assessments will be a key part of that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. Are there any other questions? Are there any comments? Do we agree the recommendation set out in paragraph 1?
Agreed. Agreed.
Okay. We now move on to agenda item excuse me, number 14, the financial regulation review. And I'll ask again Councillor Mark Salmond to lead on this. Councillor Salmond.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. I don't have an awful lot to say, but I'd just like to ask colleagues to approve the report and really note that recommendation 3 indicates that further revisions to the Council's standing orders may be required once the outcome of the work being undertaken by the Governance MOG review standing orders is known. This is to ensure consistency between these key governance documents. And I'm going to leave any questions to the officers if anybody's got any technical questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Salmond. Are there any questions on the report? Are there any comments? Okay, no questions or comments. Do we agree the recommendation set out in paragraph 1?
Agreed.
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 Now move on to item 15, budget strategy update and the use of COVID-19 funding initial proposals. Councillor Salmond again.
Yeah, thank you 3 times in a row. This is a little bit more complicated, this statement. So first, I'd like to give advance notice of a motion I'll be bringing forward as part of this report. And I've asked the Provost to consider a 15-minute recess to allow opposition colleagues to consider this motion. Just for clarity, my motion was submitted prior to the 9th of September meeting, and was deemed to have met all the criteria to be submitted by me at this meeting. So, Provost, I believe it would be appropriate if yourself and colleagues agree that officers distribute the motion now, and then we have a 15-minute recess so colleagues can consider it. And after the recess, I will present and talk to my motion.
Colleagues, are we agreed to Councillor Salmon's suggestion of a 15-minute recess?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Agreed. I hope you've had a chance. 2 additional items that Councillor Salmon would like to include in the report. I'll hand you back to Councillor Salmon.
Okay, thank you, Provost.
Provost, can we just give you notice of an amendment? I think Councillor Darnow's got an amendment.
Okay, that's fine.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mark. I welcome your report. Just to say that on the balance that you have left of the 877,000 you have left, the 877,000 you have left after your budget for the COVID-19 response. I would like to ask if we could set aside 100,000 for the reopening of community toilets, which will help with our active travel plans.
Sorry, can you be more specific to what you mean by community toilets? Which toilets we're speaking about?
I'm talking about toilets that are not open at the moment, that were closed about maybe 6 years ago, or maybe just closed since COVID. Some of them have just been closed since COVID, but some of the villages have got toilets that are closed, and some of the towns have got toilets that are closed. And now that we're having everybody out being active, and after COVID, it would be particularly helpful if we could use this money to open these toilets and make them functionable again.
I think before I could accept or consider, I need to be speaking to our office as to whether that's a feasible proposal.
Yeah, I actually have checked that out
for a reason, and they may not be in a state to be reopened. So
I understand that, Mark. The reason we've actually done this bit of inquiry on this, and there is some that can be opened. There will be some that we'll have to look at, but maybe if we'll have some funds allocated, we could maybe look at putting in some temporary toilets. But it is something that really needs to be looked at.
I'd be happy to consider it at a later date after further discussions, but I don't think I can accept it personally at the moment without having further information provided, and obviously costings put forward by officers. Obviously, you've picked a number of 100, but we don't actually know what the figures would be. As I say,
the average maintenance toilet.
Stop.
Can I second Councillor Durno?
Can we just stop for a minute? I think that the sensible thing in it said, the bottom paragraph of the paper, that the money would be made available, and I think it's and I think Councillor Durno's suggestion is a sound, and it's a fair suggestion. But I do feel that if we could maybe bring that back at a later date, at the next meeting, for example, and we could then move on that and get that implemented if need be. But I do feel, and I agree with what you're saying, Councillor Durno. You're absolutely right about the toilets. But I think that if we could have a wee bit more look at it, a wee bit more detail, come back with exact figures, and then we could move.
Yeah, thanks.
Is that okay?
Thanks,
Councillor Bray, very quickly, and then we want to go on with the motion. Okay, Councillor Bray.
Yes, Provost, Councillor Durno has put forward her amendment. Councillor Devine has seconded it. And while Councillor Salmon doesn't think there's enough detail, there's every bit as much detail as the location of the toilets that might be repaired as there is in Councillor Salmon's motion. So I don't see why this amendment can't be taken now.
That's absolutely fine. Councillor Salmon, what we'll do is you will move the motion with your extra items. You've got a seconder. Councillor Durno has got an amendment, which I presume is the motion plus the toilets. Would that be correct? Okay. Yeah. You've got a seconder and Councillor Devine, and we'll move the motion, move the amendment, debate, and then go to the vote. Is that fair enough?
Provost, could I just say that, yes, I do second, and especially with my Older People's Champions hat on, I think it's absolutely vital that we do have these opened. But I would also like Councillor Salmon just to consider a word change in his motion where it says roads maintenance to have roads and pavement maintenance in it, because there really hasn't been enough work done on pavements. And again, listening to older people. This is a real problem for people with sticks, with people with wheelchairs. We really do need to up the amount of money that we spend on pavements. I don't know if you would just accept that as a little amendment to your motion.
Sorry, 2 seconds. Can I ask Mr. Cochrane a question, please? Because in my motion I'm about to speak about, I am speaking about roads and pavements. So I assume that Mr. Cochrane, when he speaks about roads maintenance, is meaning roads and pavements. So maybe if we get some clarity from Mr. Cochrane, I think we might be on the same page.
Mr. Cochrane's not here, but we'll ask Mr. Scott. Walter, I believe you're here.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, just to confirm, the roads in this instance does include the carriageway, or the road as we now know it, and the pavement, which is the footway. So yes, it would include for anywhere within the road, be that the carriageway, the footway, or the verge, indeed. So roads is not just the carriageway, it would include the pavement, as we all know that term now.
Okay, Councillor happy with that?
Okay.
Thank
yes.
you. Councillor Moore, you've got a point, and then I want to move on.
Yes, Provost. Councillor Durno has said about community toilets, said as detailed as Councillor Salmon's motion, but I'm a bit wary about moving forward on an amendment that is vague. I would like to know which toilets are being referred to.
Yeah, but I think to be fair, Councillor Durno, Councillor Moore, we'll take our amendment as it is and see how we go on. We'll go to the vote and we'll see how it goes on. Okay, I hear what you're saying.
Thanks, Provost. And I can send over the list of all the toilets to all the councillors after this meeting, because I have looked into this in great detail and I do have all the details. Okay.
Absolutely fine. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Provost, and I'm happy to support Councillor Durno's motion. I would make a point to yourself and to the administration, and perhaps to Councillor Salmon, that the administration in my book is in charge of the agenda, and I do not understand why Councillor Salmon couldn't have inserted this into the original paper. That would have been the correct and proper thing to have done. This is just symptomatic of the sort of shenanigans we had at the budget last year, where the administration introduced things at the last minute. This should be in the papers. We should all have had a chance to read and digest it about 3 weeks ago. Okay, so I'm giving you my opinion. I think this is not the way to conduct. It's not the way to conduct council business.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And as Councillor Salmon intimated, he did. He was going to bring it up on the 9th of September. I don't think there's any shenanigans intended. However, that's fine. If we could move on then with your motion, Councillor Salmon.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you, Provost. Before I begin, while I can't accept Councillor Durno's amendment, I am happy to have a meeting with her and officers as soon as we possibly can and sit down and have a discussion about her amendment. But as I say, I can't accept it today.
No, Councillor Salmon, I think we could actually rule that Councillor Durno does put an amendment forward.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I'm not meaning she can't put it forward. I'm just trying to explain that. I have a discussion with her about it.
I know exactly what you're saying. You want more detail, but at the end of the day, that detail will forthcome, and Councillor Durno is allowed to put their motion forward.
Yeah.
Councillor Moore, is that an old hand or a new one?
Provost, can I begin moving this motion, please?
Yeah, well, just hang on. There's a hand up. Can you take it down, please? Okay. Councillor Duff, ditto. Right. Carry on, Councillor Salmon.
Thank you very much. So before I go into detail, I would just like to acknowledge the excellent work that Councillor Macmillan Douglas has done in overseeing Angus Council's finances over the last 4.5 years. A big thank you, Angus, from the administration for all your hard work and dedication. As the new finance convener, I have inherited a robust financial position which will allow this administration to create a strong COVID-19 recovery plan for the County of Angus. The report today begins to plan for next February's budget. As you would expect, I have already begun work with officers to create a clear pathway to present a balanced budget for 2022. This report shows the use of COVID-19 funding to bolster our reserves and plans ahead to help support our important services that our residents use day and daily. Delivering savings through the Council's Change Programme and officers working to reimagine services are a vital part of reducing the Council's funding gap and helping to keep council tax in Angus as low as possible. This administration's aim is to continue providing high quality services while maintaining a low council tax. It's my ambition to look at small, innovative interventions which will create a multiplier effect of benefits in our local communities and create ways of allowing communities to be more self-supportive. A good example of initial projects is the Visit Angus Phase 1. The Interim Director of Vibrant Communities and myself looked at ways we could expand tourism in Angus throughout the winter and decided winter toilet provision was a vital and important requirement for all visitors. Therefore, we intend to introduce immediately this winter 1. Saturday and Sunday opening at Montrose, Arbroath and Moneyfeith splash park locations. Carnoustie is open all year round already and these will be free of charge to use. Number 2, a £20,000 investment to upgrade the Glendale toilets, a key winter destination. And 3, temporary toilets at Lunan Bay until the end of the season to allow stakeholder discussions on a private sector solution. I can also further announce that all Angus Council Superloos will remain free of charge until March 22. And it is my ambition to announce a continuation of them being free until March 2023 in February's budget. These are just a few small examples of the administration's desire to find creative ways of supporting outdoor activities and tourism in Angus and creating better outcomes for our communities. The administration has taken the decision that this is the right time in the COVID-19 recovery cycle to spend an additional £1 million on target areas of vital importance identified by Angus residents, and accordingly I will outline my proposals contained in today's motion. 1. To deal with weather resilience measures, the motion outlines an additional £100,000 for additional gully cleaning to deal with high priority areas prone to flooding. 2. £50,000 for the purchase of additional grit bins. 3. £50,000 for the creation of a winter community can-do fund. This fund will allow communities to self-help in snow clearing and basic gritting and make available safety equipment, etc. The £200,000 for winter resilience will come to the road safety mob for further discussion. The biggest part of the £1 million, the £800,000, will be spent on additional roads maintenance ahead of this year's winter weather. Subject to council agreement today, roads officers already have plans in place to hit the ground running in all areas over Angus. I know this additional spend on Angus roads will be welcomed by Angus residents, and I would hope this will be ratified unanimously today by all councillors present. These investments are spent to save, as we must start investing more on our roads before they become more costly to repair. As they say, a stitch in time saves 9. The report before us today is revenue, but I just want to reassure all colleagues that my eye is on the ball as far as capital is concerned, and I have agreed a line-by-line review of all uncommitted capital projects with the Director of Finance, as outlined and agreed at the Capital Project Monitoring Group. We are looking in 4 areas. 1. Is the project still relevant? 2. Review costings of the project. 3. Deliverability. And 4. Is it still a priority in our ambitious council plan? And to avoid any confusion, the new Moneyfeith School is this administration's #1 priority project and will be delivered on schedule. The Council's 2 other big projects, namely the A90 Link Road and the Arbroath Active Travel Project, will also be part of the full review to ensure they meet the criteria I have outlined. I believe that the review of the capital plan will create opportunities for me to bring forward in next year's budget a new ambitious 5-year capital investment in Angus Council roads and pavements, and it would be my intention to invest £11 million over the next 5 years to reverse the decline in Angus roads. 3 million next year and 2 million in the following 4 years. This will of course be subject to the debate, scrutiny and voting by all elected members at next year's budget. This is not for debate or voting today, only advance notice of this administration's ambitious plans for the Angus Roads network. So I would ask you to agree my motion has been sent to you earlier on by email, and I'll ask Councillor McMillan Douglas to now second me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Salmond. It gives me great pleasure to second your motion. The theme of this administration's financial strategy over the last 4.5 years has been clear. First, if we cast our minds back to May 2017, when we were elected into office, members of the SNP, the outgoing administration, commented that the money had run out and we would even be pushed to run the council. But over the next 3 years, we steadied the ship, working closely with officers, made huge efficiency savings, over £40 million, I think, per annum, largely but not wholly through the change programme, and we even built up reserves. Most importantly, we protected the most vital services for the people of Angus. Over the last 1.5 years, we managed the council and assisted vulnerable people in Angus through the pandemic with, for example, as we know, consideration of council tax where people were finding it very difficult to pay, or rents and other measures. It is right to say also that we enjoyed what was clearly life-saving financial support from the British government and the Scottish government in doing this. Councillor Salmond is now engaged in leading the recovery programme, building on prudent financial management and with investment in our historic towns and in our huge roads programme. He is helping our businesses and our tourism and the many people that they employ right across the county. I am proud to second the motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor McMillan Douglas. Councillor Durno, your amendment, please.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Travis. I'd just like to make an amendment to say that out of the remaining £877,000 that's left after Councillor Salmond's budget proposal, that we allocate £100,000 of that for reopening some more of the community toilets. I am aware of the Lunan Bay situation, but community toilets which will help with our active travel plans and make life a lot easier for the residents of Angus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Durno. Second, Councillor Devine.
Yeah, formal second.
All right, right. Councillor Duff. Seconder.
Councillor Devine.
Councillor Devine, yeah. You want to add
I just said I'm formally seconding it because
okay,
I've said
sorry.
it.
Thank you. Beg your pardon. Okay. Questions and comments? Questions? Councillor Speed, followed by Councillor Moore. Questions?
Yeah, thanks, Provost. I'm certainly fully supportive of seeing our toilets within Angus opened up again to support our residents and to support kind of active travel and meeting kind of basic human rights and health needs. I would, however, just like a little bit more information from Councillor Durno with regards to the exact toilet locations that she's talking about. And I'd also like to just raise my kind of interest in further discussions, especially in terms of the inclusion of accessible toilets and changing places.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Speed. Councillor Durno?
I'd just like to come back to Councillor Speed and say that one of these toilets in particular is in Inverkeeler, which actually has a disabled toilet which has been closed for the last 2 years, meaning that children that are playing in the park can't access the toilets when they need to. We have got a document that has been sent to us from Suzanne from Graham Daly's area of work, and it has located all the toilets in Angus which have been closed or need to be refitted to be reopened. So that's why I've quoted that figure of 100,000. We're talking an average toilet is 6,000 a year to maintain. So that would give us quite a lot of money to maybe open 16 toilets if we could. And I am really pleased to hear that Lunan Bay is going to be getting opened, even though it's near the end of the season now. But I would quite happy to work with you together, the two of us, to make sure that all the toilets that we're looking at have got accessibility for everybody. Okay.
Okay.
So just for clarity, Provost, if it's okay, just to come back then, so we're agreeing in principle, or perhaps maybe agreeing in principle to the further expansion and opening up of toilets, but the finer detail of that will be brought back in a report once we've had the chance to discuss that together.
I mean,
officers.
I mean, Councillor Durno has identified certain toilets that can be opened, and that's what she's moving her amendment on. Okay, so we at the moment we heard mention of Inverkeeler. Councillor Salmon had said that that Lunan Bay and other toilets are actually in his proposal. That's actually happened. This is in addition to what current Councillor Durno is proposing. We don't know what the other toilets will be, and it'll depend if we go to the vote whether the motion or the amendment. Then what the result of that, we would then look at the detail for the other toilets. Is that okay?
We do have the officers looking into this at the moment, Provost, for us. Okay, thank you.
That's fine. Councillor Duff.
Thanks, Provost. Really just to make the point to Councillor Speed that Councillor Salmon hasn't identified the roads he's going to be repairing, so I think it's a bit unreasonable to expect Councillor Durno to identify every individual toilet. It's a pot of money to be spent on good works, and both are worth supporting.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Duff.
Is it okay to come back again, Provost?
No, come on, because I've got quite a lot to go on. There's a lot of people with their hands up. Everybody's got to get a shot. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, while I can appreciate and support the principle, Councillor Durno has told us she can send the list after the meeting. So to me, that's not good enough. We are being asked to vote on something where we'll get the detail after we've decided. But more importantly, and with all due respect to you, Provost, I would like a legal opinion under Standing Order 16.9.
What's the last name again? One moment. Alison, could you give us some guidance here, please?
Yes, so Standing Order 16.9, subject of a report or recommendation in the case of Councillor Durno's amendment, which would involve expenditure not provided for, shall not be competent unless accompanied by information provided by the Director of Finance on the costs and funding options. It may be appropriate that we take a brief adjournment to get some guidance on that from the Director of Finance, if that would be acceptable.
Yeah. What do you recommend? 10 minutes? Or 15?
Yeah.
I think, Provost, to be fair, I think Councillor Salmon's proposals have got to be vetted by the Director of Finance as well, don't they?
No, they were actually vetted before the 9th of September. He actually went through them and he said that in his preamble. They have been checked out before the 9th of September, when he first...
We're using reserves here, so the money's available. Your report says that there is 7 million left, so the money's there.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, let's just, to clear the air, we'll take a 10-minute break, speak with the legals, and then we'll move on. Okay, thank you. Colleagues, I've spoken to our legal team, and the motion, the amendment that Councillor Durno has put forward is competent. Okay, just ascertained that. So I'm sorry, Councillor Moore, what you said, I'm afraid it isn't correct. However, I believe that Mr. Lorimer just wants to say a few words. Mr. Lorimer.
Thank you, Provost. Good afternoon, Councillor. Yeah, it was just to clarify. I think the wording of Councillor Durno's amendment is quite important here in terms of that view of competency that you're taking, Provost. So what I understood Councillor Durno's amendment to be was to allocate 100,000 of the 877,000 that would still be available towards the reopening of community toilets to help with active travel plans. Can you hear me, Provost? I'm getting a message about poor network quality. Did you hear what I was saying?
I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Yeah, so it's about the decision I think the council is being asked to make today is about setting aside a sum of money. Clearly, there would need to be further work beyond today to work out how that money would be used in detail. So I think the view around competency is around a decision or not as to whether to set aside the funding, with more detail to come at a future point. We have said within the report that's before Council today that there are a number of other potential uses for the COVID funding, and it is our intention to bring back a further report on those proposals in the next cycle. If Council were minded to support the amendment, we could cover the detail of which toilets within that further report to come next time. So I hope that's useful just to clarify, Provost.
Thank you. And Councillor Durno, I hope you heard that as well.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan, Ian.
Okay, thank you very much. Could we resume then on questions and comments? Sorry, we've had your secondary, we've had your amendment. Any questions and comments? Questions?
Councillor Bell.
Where is it? I can't see it. Hang on a minute. I've got Councillor Bell.
Okay, thank you, Provost. Yeah, I think Mr. Lorimer's comments are actually really helpful, and I think what Councillor Durno is proposing is exactly that, asking us to agree in principle today on the basis of all the groundwork that she's put in with officers on this issue. That allows us to set aside 100k from the additional money that's left over, which was additional by the Scottish Government to aid COVID recovery. And I think the intention of the Scottish Government was to have a system to make life better for people right now, rather than to be tucked away in reserves. So I'm really, my question is to ask Councillor Salmond if he would please reconsider and even have that amendment absorbed into his motion, because we agree with the motion. We don't have any issues with what's in your motion at all. This is an additional element that would make life much better and is consistent with, entirely consistent with the statement that you read out there around tourism, around travel, around opening up our communities for our residents. And as Councillor Device said, as the champion for older people, availability of public facilities is so much an important part of what people need to consider when they're out and about. So my question is to you is, will you reconsider taking on board the amendment today, please?
Councillor Salmond.
I'd like to, I would need to have very tight wording on this. I'm extremely sympathetic to this, but I think we need to have extremely tight wording so we know what we're actually agreeing to here. So maybe Mr. Lorimer could repeat his suggestion so that I can just consider it. As I say, I'm extremely sympathetic to this, but I don't want to be writing a blank check here. So we need to know what we're agreeing to and what the expectations are.
Well,
Ian, sorry, Ian, could you repeat what you said, please?
You okay with that, Provost?
Yeah, please, Ian, I'll just wait.
Yeah. What I was quoting, and I did say that the wording is important here, so I think that is a key thing. What I heard is Councillor Durno's wording, not mine, but what I heard Councillor Durno say was that the amendment was to allocate 100,000 from the 877,000 that's available for the reopening of community toilets to help with active travel plans. Now, that's just what I've scribbled down. It might not be absolutely word for word what Councillor Durno said, but if that captures the essence of what would be recorded in the minutes of the meeting and everybody's happy with that, then that would be a possible way forward. Provost, I hope that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Salmon.
Provost, can I ask Councillor Durno, would she happily accept the wording that Mr. Lorimer has just outlined? And yes, I would incorporate these words into my motion.
Yes, if you could, Councillor Salmon, that would be great, because I think we're all going to be out and about again a lot more, and this would be really beneficial for people who want to travel longer than 5 or 6 miles on their bike.
Thank you. What I'd like to do, Provost, is next week set up a meeting with Councillor Durno, who is the mover of the amendment, with officers to discuss this further. So we can bring back further, more detailed information to committee on. Obviously, I'm not party to the work you've already done behind the scenes with officers, which you can share with me, hopefully, as convener, and we can take this forward together.
Yep, that's fine. I already have a bit of a working group with the SNP, with Councillor Devine and Councillor Braze, who've been behind the scenes checking out their own areas.
As I say, I'm happy to incorporate the wording that I think Councillor Durno and myself, and helpfully Mr. Lorimer, has given us into the motion, if everybody else is accepting to that.
Yes.
Agreed.
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 Right, just a few hands there. Councillor Speed, do you still want to speak?
If that's okay, Provost.
By all means, as long as it's less than 3 minutes or up to 3 minutes.
Yeah, I won't take long. It was just if I could just seek some assurances from councillors and officers with regards to the consideration of changing places toilets, making sure that the ones that are already installed are fully kind of in working order, as I know there has been some issues lately of some being out of order, and also consideration into the ones that are going to be installed temporarily, and upgrades in other places that we will consider changing places. It's perhaps even at Forfar Lock side where there'll be new toilets but not a change in places. Are we able to consider where we can maximise the inclusion of change in places?
Councillor Salmon.
Well, I think as Councillor Speed knows, on 2 occasions I've reached out to her to have discussions about next year's budget. You've yet to accept that invitation. One of your non-aligned colleagues already has, and we had very constructive discussions about their interests. So I make the offer to anybody, including the SNP colleagues, anybody who wants to speak to me in the run-up to the budget. My door is open for discussions. Obviously, at the moment, I can't give you a commitment on funding Councillor Speed, but I'm happy to have a discussion with you on it.
Okay.
But just in terms of moving forward with this piece of work, as kind of details are kind of being firmed out, will everyone accept the inclusion or the consideration of changing places where possible?
Councillor Salmon.
I think we would always consider all our options, but we need to identify the budgets to pay for the options. So, as I say, I'm happy to have discussions with yourself.
I think that's a fair way forward, Councillor Speed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thanks, convener. I'm certainly very happy to support this agreement by Councillor Salmon to incorporate Councillor Durno's work, and she's been doing a lot of work on this for some time, so I'm pleased to see that. I'd just really like to make a couple of points. The Councillor Salmon's original motion to spend £1 million on winter and weather work, while welcome, is of course a one-off because it's from a fixed sum of money. It's not a recurring sum of money. I will remind Councillor Salmond and other elected members that the alternate SNP budget actually included these sums as strategic elements, so they would have been repeated every year in our part of our balanced budget. So this is a one-off rather than a strategic change. The second point I would make, and I think Councillor Bell touched on this, this mumming from good stewardship, as Councillor Macmillan Douglas has said. Money is coming from the Scottish Government to deal with COVID. So it's nothing to do with financial stewardship. It's a lump sum that's come to deal with the effects of COVID, and we're spending it in an appropriate way. So let's be honest about it.
Okay, thank you for that. Money comes from various sources and we spend it, UK government and the Scottish government. Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor King.
Yes, Provost. I'm glad that Councillor Salmond has seen sense and is accepting Councillor Durno's amendment, because some of his objections and wasn't detailed. Well, all I've got to say is his motion, which I have up in front of me, weather resilience measures, management of concurrent risks, includes his provisions, very vague, doesn't give any details at all. But even more so, the road maintenance one, additional investment in road maintenance, spend to save to catch repairs before winter. Totally vague, no detail whatsoever. Yet Councillor Salmond was trying to wring out of Councillor Durno details of where she was going to spend the money, when his own amendment does not give those details. I think that was rather ingenuous of Councillor Salmond, and he should have just accepted Councillor Durno's amendment without any qualifications, because his own motion is equally vague.
Councillor King, thanks for that. And we're all trying to do what's best for Angus, and I'm glad that we've come to a sensible solution, and that's good. Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Convener. Councillor Salmond didn't give a great deal of detail on the roads and things like that, but he did to give details about toilet openings. And I mean, we hadn't caught sight of that at all. So this was new, and I would just really like a bit of clarification, because I don't remember hearing Forfar in there. Did you say that Forfar toilets are going to be open longer? This is just at the butter market.
I think, Councillor Devine, if you've actually read your report, you'll see in the section by the Director of Vibrant Communities details a section about her proposals for toilets, and that's the winter opening, and that's the bits that I was highlighting.
What page is that on?
Oh God, I don't have it in front of me, but apologies, but it is definitely there.
Right, so I can't. So the superloos are open longer.
So the superloos, the announcement I made on superloos was that we are not reintroducing the charge.
Right, yes. Okay.
And my intention is to keep it free until April or till March 2023, which is that would be an announcement of funding in next year's budget. I was just wanting to float that and let businesses and people in the town centres aware that there won't be any charges in our public toilets at superloos. The point I was highlighting, Councillor Devine, was the 3 splash parks down the coast, which will now have Saturday and Sunday opening. Or the four I should say. Carnoustie's open all year round anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Devine. Councillor Braze.
Yes, well, thank you, Provost. I have to say that I am just a wee bit disappointed about how this has all come about, because I sit regularly on the winter maintenance MOG, Member Officer Working Group, with Councillor Salmond. He convenes it, and we discuss all these things in a fair amount of detail. And I'm just a bit disappointed that this has been sprung on us just as the agenda item comes up. And we're now, well, we're weeks after the original meeting was due to be convened. It just seems the wrong way to go about things and a bit disappointing, but I don't hold grudges.
Thank you very much, Councillor Braze. Councillor Macmillan Douglas.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, I want to come back to my point that Councillor Salmond has produced a game changer here. And I'm sure Councillor Duff and I will debate where the money's come from, but he has changed the game. And we really should all welcome an improvement in our roads programme. And frankly, anybody who doesn't should stand up and say so, because I think the people of Angus need to know who opposes the improvement of the roads. I'm slightly wary about the Councillor Durno's amendment, frankly, because I don't think it's very certain. But as I understand it, we've now got an absolute cap on it of £100,000. If that cap is important, otherwise we can see here the roads will lose out, and I would certainly oppose that. Thank you, Provost.
Good point. A point of clarity, please, Provost.
Hang on a minute. Just going by the hands. Councillor Salmon next to speak.
Well, actually, I was keen to sum up at some point and just to address some of the comments. So I'll just wait till our colleagues have dealt with.
I think Councillor Salmon, we'll wait till everybody else and then you can sum up. Absolutely. Councillor Devine, is that an old hand or are you?
No, no, I think I'm probably just going to say the same as Councillor Bell. We welcomed this report.
Yeah.
We absolutely did. And Councillor Salmond has accepted the amendment. Yeah. So I do what Councillor Macmillan Douglas is talking about. It's quite clear we have agreed this. We have cooperated to have better roads, better pavements, better toilets.
Good. Absolutely right. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, exactly that. But also, it's not taking any money away from the roads. It's from the money that was left over, the £877,000. So it's not diminishing any spend on the roads at all. And I was at pains to say when I spoke that we absolutely supported the content of Councillor Salmon's motion. So I just want people to be absolutely clear about that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Bell. Councillor Fairweather.
Thank you, Provost. I'll be brief. I really can't understand why anyone could be disappointed by this motion. Councillor Salmond and Councillor Stewart have put an awful lot of work into this, and this is for the benefit of all the people in Angus. We have listened today, and there's no doubt we've listened today to what Councillor Durno's amendment was, and it's now been included, and that can only strengthen where we're going, where this is going. This is good for Angus, and I'm delighted today that we have, it looks like, got an agreement. But this has been put forward because of the work of the administration and the convener and the vice convener working with our officers. It should be welcomed. Let's get on with it. We've got an agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Salmon, do you want to sum up?
Yes, thank you. And I welcome the agreement that we've reached today. I think it's the way forward. If we can work together, we should work together. And I keep saying to people, whether it's as the convener of communities or the convener of finance, my door's open to anybody, any colleague to come and have a discussion about anything that I have a responsibility on. Councillor Braze is well aware of that. We have a very constructive relationship at the Road Safety MOG. I'm trying to be positive here. I don't want to be negative about this. As I say, we need to be positive moving forward. But the one point I think I really do need to make is this accusation that my motion is not as clear. Now, We're investing £800,000 in roads maintenance. That's an operational matter. I'm not aware ever of the whole list of areas of patching work ever being brought to committee. So as I said in my statement, the officers have already identified the areas that they are going to use this money on. The work will start in the very near future because we want to do the work before the winter. The amendment by Councillor Durno is slightly different, but I don't want to get into that because I don't know the toilet she's speaking about, but we will soon when we have our meeting. So I think it's a bit disingenuous of Councillor Brays and Councillor King to try and tarnish this fantastic announcement of an extra £1 million of investment by trying to imply they don't know what roads are going to be done. We never know what roads and pavements are going to be done because that's an operational matter that our officers deal with every day of the year. So I'm delighted that everybody has agreed to this motion, and let's hope we can keep moving forward by agreeing together on the important issues. Thank you.
Hear you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Salmon. Colleagues, are we agreed that the budget strategy update with the motion submitted by Councillor Salmon and the amendment by Councillor Durno is agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 16, update on things. Councillor Brazy, are you trying to speak?
Yes, sorry, Provost. I have a question actually on item 15.
Well, we've just agreed it. I'm sorry, Councillor Braze.
I thought we were just agreeing that.
I'm sorry, we've agreed the motion and we've got to move on to item 16. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. 16, update on meetings, arrangements and potential for hybrid model for meetings. And this is going to be Steve Leslie to lead on this, to speak on this.
Excuse me, Provost, myself, Sharon Faulkner, I'm going to introduce the report. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Provost, and thank you to you members. When we presented the report on the potential for hybrid meetings to Council on the 24th of June this year, it was agreed to authorise myself, in consultation with Mrs Buchanan, to develop a full business case summarising the advantages and disadvantages from making an investment in an appropriate IT solution to allow hybrid meetings, taking into account the financial and non-financial implications. And also that the business case would be subject to a further report in the first cycle after the summer recess, at which point you as members would be asked to determine whether to invest in the necessary equipment or not. You'll see from the report, however, submitted that this is not a business case for consideration. However, it gives an update on where we are in IT in considering hybrid working across the Council in conjunction with property and facilities staff. We're exploring a variety of solutions which may also be applied to elected members and committee meetings, including in-house solutions which members had requested we look at when we last discussed this. These considerations will also take into account the current Scottish Government guidance around social distancing and any future changes to this. And Steve Leslie is here from IT, my colleague from IT, to answer any questions that you might have around that work. The purpose of providing a demonstration of a system of one of the previously costed options is to give you as elected members the opportunity to see what a fully managed system can provide. However, that absolutely doesn't assume that you will choose to go with that option. Our intention is to present an options appraisal to members ranging from in-house to a fully managed solution, and that will allow you to make the decision based on all the facts and cost information available, which we can then progress. IT is currently exploring all of the options as part of the next phase of our Agile programme to allow hybrid working for employees and elected members. However, it is taking a bit more time than we had originally envisaged, and therefore it's likely that the business case, the options appraisal, will not be brought forward until December or January. This report asks you in the meantime to agree to continue remote meetings at least until the end of this year. Myself and Steve are happy to take any questions or comments from you. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, I'd already passed on details of a local authority that I'm aware of that's using a hybrid model. That's I think they're just finalising protocols for its use. But I just wondered, in general, had other contacts been made across the local authority sector, because we're all dealing with the same issues, and I think it's fair to say that, you know, there's no point in reinventing the wheel if somewhere else has got a system that's working really well, and it cuts down on the labour required from our team as well. Thanks.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Bell, and thank you for the information that you passed on, and I've shared that with Steve and his team. Absolutely, we're in contact with other councils across Scotland. Caroline Cooper is a member of SOCATM, and she therefore is liaising with councils right across Scotland and gathering information. So when we're presenting our options appraisal, we will be taking all of that into account, and we will present you with that information.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Provost. I know that Councillor MacDonald had some quite strong views on this subject, but unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, he's not on the call today. So I can remember a couple of his comments. I think I'd make 2 points. I think clearly we know that we're going to have to make a significant investment in the facilities for our chamber, and I would have thought it's unlikely that's going to happen before the next election. That would be my guess. So I think we should put our time frame there. I think we would agree with the continuing the status quo in terms of meetings until the end of the year. That seems sensible, prudent course of action. I think the second thing we need to look at is where are we going to hold our meetings when we go back to meetings. I think we need to have an open mind here, because it may be that the Town and County Hall may not be the best location. And if we are going to spend significant sums of money on the IT and the audio system, we spend it once rather than doing a lot of rework. So I would just ask officers to have an open mind about looking at our real estate and just looking for the best medium-term option rather than something that would be a short-term fix.
Okay, thank you, Sharon.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Duff. Yeah, absolutely, that is what we will be doing. We will be looking at the hybrid working arrangements for officers and elected members across the council, and seeking to get something that is sustainable and long-term. And that may mean, you know, looking at other venues for committee meetings as well, and we'll take that into account. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Moore.
Yes, thank you, Provost. Thank you, Sharon, for the report and for the additional information you provided me. I've learned that before my time in Angus House, there was a boardroom, a large boardroom area. And I'm thinking that if we're going to be agile working and continuing staff working from home, would there be a part of Angus House that would be possible to hold these hybrid meetings in, especially as it would put it in very close proximity to the IT department?
Thank you, Councillor Moore. That is certainly something that we can consider when we're looking at all of the options. We are looking at meeting rooms for officers as well, because there are large meetings that need to take place, whether they're in terms of training or meetings perhaps with other community planning partners. So absolutely, we'll be looking to utilise the space within Angus House, and there may be possibilities there for elected members as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Sharon. Does that answer your question? Councillor Fairweather.
Thank you, Provost. Just to say that I actually totally agree with what Councillor Duff said, and I certainly do believe that it would be sensible that it's after next year's election, because we don't know who's going to be in and what money will have to be spent on what type of equipment. It just goes to show that when we do work together, right, we get sensible agreements. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments? Councillor Speed, comment or a question?
Comment.
Okay, comment. Go on.
In regards to the setting of agendas and the duration of council meetings, as you know, we're on to our third meeting of the one council meeting that was set, and I just want to make the point and kind of just how I think we need to make sure that our meeting times don't go on as long as they have done.
Councillor Speed, thanks for that. But that's not really to do.
Well, I think it is important, especially when we're talking about.
Mr. Steve, and understood, but it's not really to deal with. We're talking about a hybrid situation in the future, and I do take ignorance of what you're saying. I couldn't agree with you more. Okay, but that is not to do with what we're dealing with today. You're talking about the hybrid. You know, the future, what we're going to do in the future with IT and stuff like that. That's really
but we're talking holistically about our meetings going forward, and I'm just kind of making the point that it's not helpful for the public, especially if they are tuning in or looking to attend future meetings, that they run on for the duration that they do and they're broken up and so fragmented.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For that. Absolutely. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, colleagues, other recommendations in paragraph 1 agreed?
Agreed.
Right, colleagues, you'll note that the next item listed in the agenda is Ingalls Court, and that item was considered and dealt with in the amendment put forward by Councillor Brays and Councillor Miles on the 9th of September, including the decision to decline an unsolicited offer received for the purchase of a non-surplus HRA asset at Ingalls Court in Edsall. I therefore propose that there is no requirement to consider the information contained within the exempt appendix detailed at item 19 separately, as you will have taken that information into account when we made the decision. So that being the case, and the Carnoustie Golf Links Management Report was also considered. There's no requirement to exclude the public and the press. So for that, I would say that that is the end of our business. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay.
Hallelujah.